Howard Hughes was a 20th century icon, although his legend was ultimately built mainly around his eccentricity. But in the 1930s and 40s, a less oddball Hughes was renowned as a successful businessman, record-breaking and fearless aviator, and accomplished film impresario. The story of his final decades was a shocking decline into ill health and reclusiveness, as he succumbed to obsessive-compulsive disorder and chronic pain that had plagued him since a near-fatal air crash. Hughes was born into vast wealth. His father, Howard Sr., had built the Hughes Tool Company into a powerhouse of industrial machinery. By the age of 19, both his parents had died, and Hughes inherited 75% of the company. He fully indulged his interests in science and technology and aviation, having had his first flying lesson at age 14. He was also a daily golfer, playing off a scratch handicap, and considered a career in professional golf, though by his mid-20s, his interest in the game had waned. Hughes' obsessive behaviour started to manifest itself in the 1940s, with his mounting involvement in Hollywood and movie making. After buying the struggling RKO Studios and firing 700 employees, he ordered investigations of those who remained, to ensure that none had any left-wing sympathies. The studio's stars were not immune from private investigations into their political leanings either. Hughes dated many Hollywood legends, including Joan Crawford, Bette Davis, Ava Gardner, Katharine Hepburn, and Ginger Rogers. But his decades-long on-and-off relationship with Jean Peters would raise eyebrows. The couple met in the 1940s and considered marriage in 1947, though they wouldn't tie the knot until 1957. When they were not an item, Hughes' security men would follow her everywhere, with instructions to warn off any men who showed an interest in her. While directing the 1943 film The Outlaw, Hughes became obsessed with a small flaw in one of Jane Russell's blouses, and wrote a lengthy memo to the crew, demanding that it be fixed. Director Richard Fleischer, who worked under Hughes as executive producer on the 1951 film His Kind of Woman, wrote frustratedly of the tycoon's obsession with trivial details and the difficulty of working with him. He also noted that Hughes had wildly unpredictable mood swings. 5 years before that, in 1946, Hughes had narrowly escaped death while test flying the XF-11, a new Air Force reconnaissance plane. Serious injuries from the crash resulted in an addiction to codeine and almost constant pain. In 1958, Hughes announced that he wanted to screen some movies at a film studio near his home. He stayed in the studio's darkened screening room for more than 4 months without leaving. Surviving on a diet of chocolate bars, chicken and milk, he was surrounded by dozens of Kleenex boxes that he constantly stacked and rearranged. He wrote detailed memos to his aides, informing them that they could neither look at him nor speak to him unless spoken to. For the entire 4 months, Hughes sat in a chair, often naked, watching movies. There's lots more to come in this video, but please consider liking, subscribing to the channel and sharing. And please consider supporting my work with a PayPal donation. The link is in the description. Thank you. Emerging in the summer of 1958, his appearance became the image with which he would always be associated. Long hair and nails, near or fully naked, with horrendous personal hygiene. From the screening room, he moved into a bungalow at the Beverly Hills Hotel, along with his aides and his wife. He continued watching films in the nude, which is thought to be due to a condition called allodynia, a chronic pain ailment, where pain is experienced through the mere touch of anything such as clothes or the cutting of hair. By now, Hughes had also developed his famous aversion to germs. Items would have to be passed to him using a series of tissues. Rooms in which he stayed were dusted constantly, and the merest hint of dust on the clothes of one of his aides would be criticized. Curiously, though, for someone germ-obsessed, he also began to store his urine in bottles. By the 1960s, Hughes had completely withdrawn from public view, flitting between a series of hotels in the US, the Bahamas, and Canada. Settling in Las Vegas in late 1966, he avoided conflict with the owners of the Desert Inn by simply buying the hotel. The 8th floor became the center of his business operation, while the 9th was his personal penthouse. He then bought other casinos in Vegas, including the Silver Slipper, reportedly because its neon slipper sign kept him awake at night. When he finally left the Desert Inn, staff discovered that the curtains in his hotel room had never been opened. A panel of aides ran the minutiae of his business empire and catered to his every whim. On hearing that Hughes liked Baskin-Robbins' now discontinued banana nut ice cream, they secured a bulk shipment from the manufacturers of 350 litres. A few days after it arrived, Hughes casually announced that he didn't like it anymore, and the hotel was forced to give it away free to customers for a year. Jean Peters filed for divorce in 1970, having not seen Hughes in years, and only speaking to him on the phone. Shortly after that, his reclusiveness presented another problem. Authorities in Nevada planned to root out organized crime in Las Vegas by making casino owners appear before a committee, a prospect which horrified Hughes. He offered to appear by phone, which was rejected. Feeling unfairly treated, he left Las Vegas, initially surfacing in Nicaragua. Then, after buying the Xanadu Princess Resort in Grand Bahama, he relocated there and stayed in the penthouse suite for almost all the last 4 years of his life. His only contact with the outside world were occasional phone teleconferences. So disconnected from society had he become that people even doubted that the voice on the other end of the phone was really him. Howard Hughes died on the 5th of April 1976, on board a Learjet bound for the Methodist Hospital in Houston. His long-haired, long-nailed frame weighed only 90 pounds, and 5 broken hypodermic needles were found in his arm. In the opinion of the coroner who performed the autopsy, one of the richest and most famous men in the world had died in a worse condition than a penniless tramp. George Galloway has been one of the most colourful figures in British politics since the 1980s. His career, in which he has been a Member of Parliament for more than one party, has been punctuated by controversy, fallouts, and memorable moments, far too many to detail in one video. But his appearance in May 2005 before the United States Senate Committee on Homeland Security stands out as one of the most compelling pieces of political theatre in recent times. Galloway had long been a supporter of the cause of Arab nationalism and a fierce critic of Western foreign policy in the region. In 1994, following the First Gulf War, and while he was still a sitting Labour MP, he travelled to meet Saddam Hussein. He gave a much criticised address to the Iraqi dictator, appearing to praise his strength and indefatigability, although Galloway asserted that his remarks were addressed to the Iraqi people via Saddam. The events that led to the Senate committee confrontation unfolded after the 2003 American and British invasion of Iraq that toppled Saddam. On the 22nd of April that year, the Daily Telegraph published documents found by its journalist, David Blair, in the ruins of the Iraqi Foreign Ministry. They purported to show that Galloway had received $375,000 a year from the Iraqi regime that had been diverted from the country's oil for food program, a mechanism that provided basic necessities to Iraq while they were under crippling sanctions. Galloway completely denied the allegations, questioned the authenticity of the documents and the motives behind their discovery, and sued the paper for libel. The case began in the High Court on the 14th of November 2005. The Daily Telegraph offered a public interest rather than a justification defence, effectively admitting that the story was untrue. However, Justice David Eadie ruled that the article had been seriously defamatory, as it used words about the politician such as treason, in Saddam's pay, and Saddam's little helper. Galloway was awarded substantial damages and costs. Despite his apparent vindication, similar allegations emerged again just 6 months later. A May 2005 report issued by the Senate Permanent Committee on Investigations alleged that Galloway, amongst other European politicians, had personally profited from the sale of oil in the Oil for Food program, to the tune of 20 million barrels. It further claimed that the Mariam Appeal, a campaign set up by Galloway to treat an Iraqi child with leukemia and to protest UN sanctions, had been a front for the laundering of oil for food money through donations from an Iraqi businessman, Fawaz Zurikat. The report used as its source Tariq Aziz and Taha Yassin Ramadan, the former foreign minister and deputy prime minister in Saddam's Iraq. Both men had surrendered to US forces and, under interrogation, had made a series of incendiary claims. Galloway, pointing to his vindication in the courts and a Charity Commission investigation that found no financial impropriety in the Mariam Appeal, dismissed the report. He claimed that US pro-war politicians were trying to distract attention from rampant sanctions busting by US corporations and the theft of billions of dollars of Iraqi wealth in the aftermath of the invasion. Seeking a right of reply, Galloway arranged to appear before the Senate committee. Upon arriving in the US, he dismissed his bête noire, Republican Senator for Minnesota and Committee Chair Norm Coleman, as, quote, a pro-war neocon hawk and the lickspittle of George W. Bush. The stage was set for televised political pyrotechnics. There's lots more to come in this video, but please consider liking, subscribing to the channel and sharing. And please consider supporting my work with a PayPal donation. The link is in the description. Thank you. After the legal formalities, Galloway was allowed an opening statement. He unleashed a verbal volley with both barrels, and the US senators, accustomed to forelock-tugging deference, were visibly taken aback. When challenged on his meeting twice with Saddam Hussein, Galloway had this reply.
As a matter of fact, I've met Saddam Hussein exactly the same number of times as Donald Rumsfeld met him. The difference is, Donald Rumsfeld met him to sell him guns and to give him maps, the better to target those guns. I met him to try and bring about an end to sanctions, suffering, and war, and on the
responding to the documents purporting to show his wrongdoing, Galloway was unyielding.
Now, you have nothing on me, Senator, except my name on lists of names from Iraq, many of which have been drawn up after the installation of your puppet government in Baghdad. If you had any of the letters against me that you had against Zhirinovsky and even Pasqua, they would have been up there in your slideshow for the members of your committee today.
And attacking the testimony of high-level Iraqi detainees, he sought to cause maximum embarrassment to US authorities.
In these circumstances, knowing what the world knows about how you treat prisoners in Abu Ghraib prison, in Bagram Air Base, in Guantanamo Bay, including, I may say, British citizens being held in those places, I'm not sure how much credibility anyone would put on anything you managed to get from a prisoner in those circumstances.
At every turn, the British MP tried to contrast the allegations of the committee with the then increasingly unpopular Iraq War.
Senator, this is the mother of all smokescreens. You are trying to divert attention from the crimes that you supported, from the theft of billions of dollars of Iraq's wealth. Have a look at the real oil for food scandal. Have a look at the 14 months you were in charge of Baghdad, the first 14 months, when $8.8 billion of Iraq's wealth went missing on your watch. Have a look at Halliburton and the other American corporations that stole not only Iraq's money, but the money of the American taxpayer.
After dealing with Coleman's questions, Galloway was then questioned by the slightly less hostile Senator Carl Levin. Nevertheless, it still became a heated exchange.
Opposed this oil for food program.
There's a lot of things you oppose, but you don't believe should be circumvented in illegal ways, isn't that?
Well, please, Senator, you supported the illegal attack on Iraq. Don't talk to me about illegality.
Sorry about that, I didn't. But that's beside the point.
Well,
that's beside the point. You're wrong on your facts.
I'm collectively talking about the Senate, not you personally.
Well, it's okay. That's all right. Let me go back to my question. I don't want to get. I don't want to get involved. I don't want to get involved in.
Why not? You want to talk about illegality?
No.
You launched an illegal war which has killed 100,000 people.
Let's try.
You want me to be troubled about?
No, I want you to answer. I want you to answer questions which are fairly put and directly put to you. Now I'll ask you.
And with that, the session wrapped up. But the theatre of Galloway's appearance made news broadcasts and headlines on both sides of the Atlantic and increased his profile significantly. In a final report, the Senate committee doubled down on their accusations and added to them, claiming that Galloway had, quote, knowingly made false or misleading statements under oath. The British politician challenged them to charge him with perjury and claimed Coleman's motive for the perjury accusation was revenge for being embarrassed by him. George Galloway is not everyone's cup of tea, and certainly not the establishment's. But his appearance in Washington was an instant classic, and he is rare among politicians for standing up for what he believes in, whether you agree with him or not. Bob Lazar stunned the world in the late 1980s with claims that he had worked on alien spacecraft in the US military's legendary top-secret facility, Area 51. Whilst logic tells us that his tales are preposterous, just enough fragments of evidence have kept his story alive for over 30 years. In a May 1989 interview with investigative reporter George Knapp on Las Vegas TV station KLAS, under the pseudonym Dennis and with his face hidden, Lazar detailed his work at S4, a secret facility he claimed exists near the Nellis Air Force Base installation, known as Area 51. According to Lazar, aircraft hangars built into the side of mountains housed alien craft that had been captured or crashed. His work involved reverse engineering these ships to gain scientific knowledge of how they operated. Giving a second interview that November, unmasked and as himself, he said he worked for the US Navy via defense contractor EG&G. The company immediately said that they had no record of him working for them. Lazar went on to describe the propulsion systems of the alleged alien craft. He said they used antimatter, fueled by the chemical element with atomic number 115. This element had not been named at the time of Lazar's interview, but was later synthesized in 2003 and named moscovium. The resulting energy, according to Lazar, would propel the craft through a gravity distortion field. He additionally claimed to have read documents proving that Earth had been visited for 10,000 years by aliens from the star system Zeta Reticuli. However, no planets have yet been found in that system. A further claim that he had seen an alien specimen in a lab was withdrawn in later years. Lazar's assertion that he had a master's degree in physics from MIT and in electronic technology from Caltech were both disputed by the universities, as was his claim to have worked at Area 51. His credibility seemed to be non-existent. Then, just as his story looked to be falling apart, one other discredited claim, that he had worked as a physicist at Los Alamos, suddenly reignited interest. There's lots more to come in this video, but please consider liking, subscribing to the channel, and sharing. And please consider supporting my work with a PayPal donation. The link is in the description. Thank you. KLAS TV found the name Lazar Robert in a 1982 Los Alamos National Laboratory phone directory, but the laboratory repeatedly denied having any records on him. All of a sudden, Lazar's claim that he had been scrubbed from official records for speaking out sounded a little more plausible. If he could establish an attempt to discredit him, the obvious question would be, what did he know that the US military and government went to such lengths to cover up? Continuing interest in Lazar revealed more about the man himself. In 1990, he pleaded guilty to pandering after being arrested during an investigation into a prostitution ring. In addition to 150 hours community service, he was ordered to undergo psychotherapy. In 2006, a company he operates, United Nuclear Scientific Equipment and Supplies, which sells a variety of materials and chemicals, was charged with violating the Federal Hazardous Substances Act for shipping restricted chemicals across state lines. A guilty plea resulted in a $7,500 fine. In 2017, Lazar's workplace was raided by the FBI and local police, which Lazar theorizes was to recover element 115, a substance that he says he took from a government lab. Records obtained through a Freedom of Information request show the raid was part of a murder investigation. The enduring story of Bob Lazar seems to have three possibilities: that he is being truthful, that he is being untruthful, or that the US military tacitly support his and other claims, as UFO stories help them obscure what really goes on at top-secret facilities. Lazar still has supporters, and his claims find a fair hearing on platforms such as the Joe Rogan podcast. He admits he has no evidence. The likelihood is that his claims are fabricated, but the passage of time may have made that irrelevant. In the same way that new generations are no longer interested in the Kennedy assassination, they are also increasingly disinterested in UFOs. As society becomes more self-obsessed by the day, many are uninterested in other humans, let alone extraterrestrials. But Bob Lazar provided us with a tantalizing story that was of its time. In the lead up to the millennium, with all its prophecies of doom or fulfillment, he captured the imagination with a tale of visiting aliens and their amazing technology. And if, for a moment, he made people think outside of their narrow box, then it hardly even matters if it was true.